Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, May 20th, 2014, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the Board and to transact any other business to come properly before the Board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Friday, May 16, 2014, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, the Town Clerk of Westfield, the Alternative Press, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of the meeting. Dana, roll call, please.
Rich Matesic.
Here.
Lucy Biegler. Ann Carey. Mark Friedman.
Here.
Brendan Galligan. Roseanne Kerstead.
Yes.
Ginny Lights.
Here.
Gretchen Olig.
Here.
Mitch Slater.
Here. Thank you. Could you please join me in a flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Announcements. Anything on here?
I do. I have a couple. First of all, some Board of Education election news. Westfield residents interested in becoming a Board of Education member for a 3-year term from 2014 to 17 must file a petition in person in the office of the County Clerk at 2 Broad Street, room 113, Elizabeth, on or before 4 p.m. on July 28, 2014. The actual election will take place on Tuesday, November 4th, 2014. Nominating petition forms are available at the Board of Ed office at 302 Elm Street. The members whose terms are expiring on the Westfield Board of Education include Ann Carey, Mark Friedman, and Roseanne Kerstead. In a May 6th announcement, Ms. Carey stated that she will not seek a 4th term on the Board of Ed. Questions regarding the election process can be referred to the Union County Election Supervisor, Lisa Hugelmeyer, at 908-527-4996. Information is also available at the County Clerk's website at www.ucnj.org/county-clerk, CTYCLERK. Another announcement from the high school. Congratulations to the cast, crew, and director of Westfield High School's fall performance of Metamorphosis. It captured the Outstanding Overall Production Award at the Montclair State University Theater Night Awards on May 12th. Westfield's theater department also won Outstanding Performance by a Supporting Actress in a Drama for 10th grader Jesse Zimmerman and Outstanding Achievement in Stage Direction for drama teacher Daniel Devlin. The recipients of the Theater Night Awards are selected through a rigorous multi-stage adjudication process following viewing of more than 50 school plays statewide. So it's a wonderful accomplishment. Congratulations.
Also from the high school, on April 24th, Mr. Oleg Rosner, a survivor of Dachau and Auschwitz concentration camps and who appeared in the film Schindler's List, was the guest speaker at Westfield High School. Following an early morning viewing of the film, students heard Mr. Rosner describe his years of separation, starvation, and fear as a young child of the Holocaust. Mr. Rosner's heartfelt narrative was followed by a question and answer period with the students. The film and guest speaker coincided with Holocaust Remembrance Month. The assembly was sponsored by the Education Fund of Westfield through a grant submitted by teacher Tom Hornish. Mr. Rosner was contacted through his friends, the McCready family in Westfield, whose daughter is in Tom Hornish's Advanced Placement European History class. The assembly is expected to take place again next year. Another from the high school, congratulations to Westfield High School freshman Alex Jackman, whose video entitled A Teen's Guide to Understanding and Communicating with People with Autism won Best Documentary at the New Jersey Shore Short Film Festival on April 27th. Congratulations.
This is a registration reminder. Westfield parents who have children reaching the age of 6 on or before October 1st, 2014 are reminded to register their children now for first grade in September. This registration reminder applies only to students who have not yet been registered in the Westfield Public Schools for the 2014-15 school year. It does not apply to current Lincoln School kindergarten students. Formal registration took place in January, but with new families moving into town, we are encouraging these parents of the new families to register their children. This will permit better planning for appropriate classroom assignments and learning environments for our incoming children. First grade enrollment is historically higher than kindergarten, so accurate registration numbers assist greatly in projecting staffing and space requirements. If parents are uncertain where to register, they should contact Jean Rogers in the superintendent's office at telephone number 908-789-4420.
Also at the high school, the Westfield High School Choral Department announced that 11 singers were accepted into the 2014-15 New Jersey All-State Mixed and Women's Choirs. Congratulations to the following students who were accepted. The mixed chorus is Noah Bram, Alex Sestero, Catherine Coe, and Julian Moan. And into the All-State Women's Chorus is Lauren Eshaw, Lucy Hale, Erin Hanlon, Hasitha Kakaletti, Laura Serace, Jesse Zimmerman, and Emily Holtzman. These students were selected from almost 2,000 high school singers from across the state. In November and February of next year, they'll have the thrill of performing at New Jersey PAC alongside other selected high school students from New Jersey. Congratulations to all of our talented students. And lastly, Westfield Public Schools participate in Project Child Find. The Westfield Public School District recognizes the importance of providing service to children with special needs through its Project Child Find efforts. Screening and evaluation services are available to preschoolers aged 3 to 5, to highly mobile students with disabilities such as migrant and homeless students, and to students who may be disabled even though they're advancing from grade to grade. Children found to be eligible for special education and related services are entitled to a free and appropriate special education program and related services. Information is provided to parents of children from birth through 2 through Project Child Find. And the phone number, maybe we can put it on the bottom of the screen, is 1-800-322-8174, or the county supervisor at 908-654-9860. Or you could always contact the Westfield Public School District Offices of Special Services at 789-4400, extension 4442. And all information about referrals will be kept confidential.
I have 2 announcements. The first is from the intermediate schools. The proceeds from Roosevelt Intermediate School's benefit dinner and fashion show held this spring were donated to the nonprofit Westfield-based organization Imagine, a center for coping with loss. The fundraiser, led by teacher Pam Friedman, raised $10,000 for the organization. And then this is from the Westfield High School. In recognition of academic excellence, leadership, service, and character, 115 juniors and 4 seniors from Westfield High School were inducted into the National Honor Society on May 1st. Principal Peter Renwick awarded the students with certificates, and Scott Rutherford, NHS advisor, presented NHS pins and charms. Please check the district website in the news section for the names of these nationally recognized students.
Sure. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 10th. We will be honoring the secondary teachers of the year, including Westfield Public School teachers Colleen Rapparelli and Carrie Webster, who were named Outstanding Intermediate School Teachers for 2014 by the Optimist Club of Westfield. We also will recognize Westfield High School teachers Robert Brewster, who received the Distinguished Teacher of the Year Award, James Hart, winner of the Robert and Linda Foos Memorial Award for Excellence, and Rose Calamano, selected for the PTSO Teacher of the Year. The meeting will begin at 7:30 and will be held here at 302 Elm Street.
And I'm very pleased to make an announcement tonight. We have another teacher, a teacher from Edison School, who just received a statewide award, and I'm very pleased to announce that tonight, and we're lucky enough to have him here. Very pleased to announce that Mr. Sean Bonacero has received the Award for Excellence by the New Jersey Technology and Engineering Educators Association, and he just received that award last week at Montclair State University. Let me just tell you a little bit about Sean Bonacera, although as I look in the audience, almost everybody in the audience knows a great deal more about him than I do, because the students work quite closely with him. Sean Bonacera lives and breathes technology education. Not only do we witness his exceptional dedication within the classroom, but all year round, after school, on weekends, and in the summer, when he willingly shares his skills and volunteers his time with students. Mr. Bonacera is the technology education teacher at Edison Intermediate School in Westfield, and during his 8 years there, he has opened the minds of more than 4,500 6th and 7th grade students to the world of STEM. About 7 years ago, he helped write a curriculum and launched the 8th grade robotics course as well. He keeps his students up to date with the latest technology and practices such as 3D printing and CNC machining. A visit to his classroom will reveal a student-centered environment where the students are creative and they're hands-on problem solvers, and they effectively utilize the engineering design process. You would also witness levels of excitement and award-winning invention in his classroom after school, where he volunteers his time with the Robotics Club. In just 3 short years, Mr. Bonacera guided his club members to a national NASA water recycling competition award and a PTC design award at a First Tech Challenge qualifying competition. Starting with 6 students, the club has now grown to 30, ranging from 6th to 12th grade students. And the club's 2 teams qualified for this year's First Tech Challenge state competition, with the Parkway Division Finalist Award brought home to Westfield. As a member of the Westfield Schools STEM Committee, Mr. Bonacera's influence on our initiative has been invaluable. We're going to hear a bit more about STEM a little bit later in the meeting. In addition to writing curriculum, last summer, Mr. Bonacera coordinated and taught at Westfield's first ever STEM camp, which truly was in large part a dream of Mr. Bonacera's. More than 150 students entering grades 3 through 8 participated in hands-on robotics, rocketry, scratch programming, science lab, computer-assisted design, and Lego engineering and animation. We're really thrilled with the work that Mr. Bonacera does. I'm very proud of him and very happy that he's been acknowledged at the state level. And I'd now like to introduce both the principal of Edison School, a very proud Mr. Bolton, as well as Mr. Bonacera.
So I told Sean I have to say some things to embarrass him. I'd like to thank you all for having us here tonight. I'd especially like to thank Dr. Dolan for writing the letter on behalf of Sean to the organization which awarded him this recognition. Dr. Dolan, it showed up in my inbox one day. Not a small paragraph, a quite in-depth letter about Sean Bonacera. So, and I know Sean was taken aback to have the superintendent write a letter on his behalf. So thank you, Dr. Dolan. I have to echo everything Dr. Dolan just said. The one thing that I would add is that I've had the opportunity to work over the course of 7 years in 2 different middle schools with Sean. I've had the opportunity to watch him transform his department, his industrial technology department, from a place where kids made wooden plaques to a place where kids design robots and program robots. And there's great things in each of those tasks, but it's amazing to see where Sean and his passion has taken this department. The best thing about Sean is the work he does in the classroom with the kids. He is a master at creating a context for learning, where most kids, this is an awful statement, but oftentimes when you speak to middle schoolers on their way into school and you say, so what are you learning today in class? They'll say, I have no idea, I haven't gotten there yet. How am I supposed to know that? Whereas if you speak to Sean's kids, they say, they will give you chapter and verse on what they're going to do today because they know. And when they walk into class, they go directly to work. Sean may have to stop them and rein them in before they go off to their various tasks, but it speaks to the context in which he's created and the student-centered environment in which he works in. So we need more teachers like Sean, and we need more programs like the ones he's created. So congratulations, Sean.
I'm not quite sure what else to add to this. I do
I am a strong believer of hands-on learning and problem solving, and I really think when I started here 8 years ago, the tech ed department and the concept of iSTEM curriculum has come a long way, and it's only going to keep on going. I am extremely excited and happy with the board's support and the district's initiative, STEM initiative, and where it's going. I'm just pleased that I can be part of that initiative and have an impact on it. I do want to thank Dr. Dolan. It meant the world to me that you wrote that letter and nominated me for the NJTEA award. And the ongoing support by Mr. Bolton, Mr. Dolks, Mr. Pinero. Okay, I can't thank you enough. And most of all, I just want to thank the parents and the students that have been working with me closely with the robotics, after school, in school, and ongoing to help develop this program. And that's what keeps me motivated and keeps me going. And it is a lot of work. I do put a lot of time in. And I'm pleased that you guys were able to recognize that. But like I said, I wouldn't be able to do it without the parents and the student support. So thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, I would recognize, Ginny.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mr. Bonacera, I think you should know that the board received a letter on your behalf today from one of our local, I guess it's your Edison PTO, if not PTO president, he has certainly been very active in your PTO for quite a number of years, Mr. David Rogers, who, among other things, told us that his 2 daughters have worked in the robotics club. It is their favorite activity. He says, quote, "You are an extremely dedicated and skilled teacher. You have been a beacon of light in providing interesting, engaging, and exciting technology to the students of Westfield." This is exactly what we need to interest students in STEM subjects, especially girls. This is the present and the future of the American economy. I cannot think of a more deserving teacher. We thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yes, while everyone is welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, we are moving on with the rest of the meeting, so your choice.
You read your announcement.
I'd be happy at this time to recognize the public for agenda items only. All right, seeing no one come to the podium, we'll move to the superintendent report.
And I'm very happy to say that our superintendent report this evening happens to be about STEM. Sean Bonacera is certainly a large part of that. He's part of the district. But Mr. Pinero is going to be presenting this evening about our efforts throughout the district regarding STEM. While he's getting to the podium, we also, not quite STEM, but we also did receive notification just today from the New Jersey Department of Education that we are one of the inaugural members of Innovate New Jersey, which is a group of, I think, of approximately 10 districts in New Jersey, which are working together cooperatively and trying to share innovative ideas in the way we are working and changing things in our district. So that letter just came in today, and I believe Paul and I are going to be going to a session regarding that and learning and continuing to grow with other districts. All right, Mr. Pinero.
Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. We did just say a lot about Mr. Bonacera. I will add, and I hadn't thought of this, but when I first came here to Westfield 3 years ago, I guess it is, we were talking about STEM quite a bit, and I needed to some extent, get up to speed. But it just occurred to me while I was sitting there that, I'm a guy now who's gone to the NASA place in Greenbelt, Maryland. I went to see Particle Fever by myself on Sunday, which is all about the Hadron Collider. And I was an English major, so there was something about stepping into the environment here, and it is contagious. And like Sean's students, and Sean works with a core of similar-minded teachers who, to some extent, remind me of like garage band people. They remind you of you know, grassroots. They just love what they do, and it's a lot of hands-on stuff. But I did get caught up in all of that, and somehow, you know, an English major winds up reading a book about electrons too, 130 pages on electrons. I don't know what happened to me. I think it's probably Mr. Bonacera's fault. But this is great stuff. It's fun. It's refreshingly hands-on. And so you'll see some happy faces of students who really get to get involved in building, creating, designing. And so we'll go over just some of it tonight here. So first slide will show a little bit about what we've done so far this year. And I do have maybe, it's up to 8 pages now. We created a Google Doc for all the principals and supervisors, teachers to let me know what they've been up to that we may not be aware of. And so they filled really, it's an 8-page PDF now of what's been going on. So there are activities within classes, so you don't necessarily highlight every single class at the high school, for example, but they're creating, you know, mousetrap cars and having you know, bridge competitions, which they've been doing for years, but we continue to highlight the aspects of it that fall into the integrated STEM world. So great things are going on throughout the district, including curriculum units being written, clubs being formed. So tonight is just a highlight of the ones that we know programmatically, but there's tons of things going on, and so I'm happy to share a few of them today. So we'll go slide by slide, we'll show you each one of those, but we have this STEM camp this summer, second summer. Well, so it started last summer, right? This is right, 13-14, thank you. So we had the camp last summer. 2 new courses, which we'll show you a little bit more about in a second. That was forensics and exercise science. And we had some new clubs. There's a new code club at the elementary level. We'll talk a little bit about Hour of Code Day. And we still have our robotics teams growing. STEM competitions, you'll see a little bit about that as well. Outreach and partnerships means that we're working with STEM organizations and a local university with regard to building our STEM program, and some unit planning to start making our STEM instruction systemic. So first example, in the next slide, that's from last year, and you see the rockets on the left, and then you see students that are making robots. Those are specifically, they're specifically involved in the camp with Sean's, with his module, with the class he taught last summer. So those are just a couple of pictures, kids having fun at the summer camp last year. This one is the forensics class. We have a picture of that class, and we also had the exercise and sports science class as well launched this year. And at the bottom I included a quote from Eileen Gavin. She did the CUSAC visit a couple of weeks back. She's the county education specialist, and we sat in on that class for a little while. When we left, she said, "This is a fabulous course offering." So forensics is a hot topic, and I'm sure a lot of schools, or I'm sure schools have it, but it's not something that Eileen sees all the time. So that was good to hear. So we also have all kinds of different school-based activities going on. So the ones where you see some parents involved are included in science nights, and Science and Discovery Night was one of them. And schools throughout the district were doing their different versions and outreach to parents so that they could come in and share their expertise. That one picture at the top, they're doing banana surgery. There's actually x-rays of the banana too to see where the pin was so that they could remove the pin, extract it. There's on the bottom they're smelling stuff and getting a sense of the senses and taste, and doing a little bit of chemistry mixed in with that. And there's some chemistry going up in the right there, and a whole lot of smiles. And then on the left, the bottom left and the top left, that's part of the Hour of Code. And I think Sean mentioned it, and it's worth highlighting again that, you know, parents are involved in this too. They, you know, come up to one of the principals and say, "Hey, we have this idea." The Hour of Code was an international activity, but the first I heard of it was from parents, and then principals got together with parents. They did it after school, and in some cases the schools did them during the school day as well. And that's where that code class came from. When we talk about code at the elementary level, we're talking about, you may hear the term scratch programming. So it's at a very fundamental level, but they're programming. And you'll see a picture in a couple of slides of 2 fifth graders who won an award for an app that they created. And that was pretty cool too. So I'll be able to describe that in a slide or two. So in fact, there they are. So here were just a couple of the contests and competitions. We highlighted these on the upper left. That's one of Sean's groups. That's the middle school group. But so they had the first tech challenge included a high school group and the intermediate school. And so they finished first and in second place respectively, and earned a spot in the state championship. So that was something that we referred to a little bit earlier when Sean was here. And then the bottom right, those are the 2 gentlemen who, in fact, we just received an email from the Smithsonian EPALS Invented organization, and they were putting a press release together, and they'd like to highlight Owen and Alex. But so these young men put together an app, and what the app does is, and you can go, if you go on, it's really simple to find, but it's EPALS Invented Challenge, and you'll see them, it's really cool. You'll see them actually hawking the app, and then they go into describing it. But what it does is it randomizes in a classroom. So if you're setting up groups of students to do some cooperative work, it will randomize how the students are selected. It also randomizes things like, seating, and any time you'd have to designate. And part of their, I guess the challenge, the design challenge, was to pretty much eliminate bias on the part of the teacher in the classroom when it came to selecting things. So I thought that was pretty cool, and they did a great job with it, and so they were recognized by the Smithsonian Invented Challenge people, which is, there's so many of these types of activities out there, and the kids love it and they have a blast. So, if you have some time, stop in on the Smithsonian EPALS thing, and you'll see these guys explaining it in more detail. So good for them. And the next slide, we did have other teacher recognition as well. So this is Susan Marie Terra, who worked our camp last summer as well. And she won the Bayer, was recognized as a Bayer National Science Teacher Association Fellow for this school year. And if you may have seen her back in the picture. So she teaches the forensics course. So, we're proud of her as well. And then this is a nice shot in the next slide there, Sean. And we heard all about the recognition that he received. And so for next year, a couple things. We're going to continue with our camp, which sold out pretty quickly. So we're full for our camp. During our camp last summer, actually you'll remember a gentleman, and I forget his name, but a gentleman from Kane came to say hi. And that's the first that we heard of, or the first that Kane reached out to see what we were up to with regard to STEM. And I think it was at the update, STEM and Tech update. So afterward, he put us in contact with some folks who then visited the camp. And Brian Baldwin from Kane University, a professor over there in their STEM building, was really impressed and excited about what he saw, and asked if we would find some way to work with them. So during the year, they kept developing their vision at Kane, and we came together on a few things. So they've invited us to, they're going to help us with we write modules. It's like a curriculum for the summer camp. So they're going to send over a couple of people to sit with our teachers once they've created their modules and talk about it and see maybe if there are ways to enhance it, or really, when you get these folks in the room, they just like to kind of riff off of the different things that they can do with these kinds of activities for students. So they're going to do that. And then on the final day, remember that there are 2 one-week sessions. So it's not a 2-week session, 2 1-week. On the Friday of each week, Kane is sponsoring the bus trip of all of our 100 students and staff over to their STEM building, and we've been talking about what that day might look like. They call it the cave, but there's this 3D heart chamber. Like, you go into this cave and you're inside of a heart, and it's 3D, and you put on glasses. And so we're hoping to somehow rotate 100 students through that. You have to have special glasses. They said they didn't have enough, and I said, well, so get more. And so exactly what I said. I got that. I learned that from Ginny. But so we're hopeful there. But there'll be other kinds of sessions for the students, and it'll be a lot of fun. I asked if they could have some career, even if they're like exhibits or just tables set up to talk about STEM careers because, you know, at the heart of all this, you see it's about the kids, it's about the smiles, it's about the fun. But it's really about the future, too, for a whole nation. I mean, we need these young people to be able to, you know, take up the tasks that the future really puts before us and problem solving. And a lot of that has to do with technologies that are all connected to the S, T, E, and M. And just to demonstrate that need, the top 10 majors with the top 10 salaries coming out of college are all STEM related. 9 are engineering, I think 1 is actuary, math. I don't know if I said that right. So 1's math. And that's all STEM based. And that just goes to show, 1, you know, it's a good thing for us to prepare students for those kinds of opportunities. But 2, we need them. Otherwise, there wouldn't be that many opportunities. So, you know, we've done some, and we need to do a whole lot more. But that's my way of saying how exciting it is that we'll get to expose them to some of the career talk at that Friday session, and then they'll do some kind of wrap up with a motivational talk. So there's all kinds of things we're excited about with the camp. Curriculum-wise, and this is really important because, you know, we have all these great activities and we like them to be innovative and we like them to be organic. But it really is important for us to start laying the foundation for, you know, systemic I-STEM education. So toward that, we will be working on our K-5 science curriculum. And we will take our time with it, meaning that we'll start it now. We've just selected some point people at each elementary school and at each grade level to get very well trained in what I-STEM education is and in how to prepare units for it. And so we're starting that with a sort of a kickoff in Millburn. I'll jump down and so Millburn and we have talked about working with the Center for Excellence in STEM Education. They have a couple of actually they have a guy like Sean Bonacera, and he's been all over the map because he just has this knack for understanding what the kinds of things that Sean understands in classrooms. And he was virtually pulled out of Gateway High School because he knew a whole bunch of stuff. And people wanted to know what they can do in their schools. And before you know it, a couple of different universities have had him consulting. He's consulted at NJPSA, and he presents all over the place. That's Chris Anderson with the Center for Excellence in STEM Education. So when he came to speak at the Union County curriculum meeting, people were very interested in working with him. And so Millburn and we decided that we would invite him to work with us. So we'll share his services. We'll do an orientation with those staff members on how they're going to approach the next, the coming months, and we'll start creating units. It's a little bit more involved than that, in that you have a number of different elementary educational curricula out there that are aligned properly to the current New Jersey science standards. But off in the wings are the soon-to-be, we assume and think, next-generation science standards. So for what it's worth, and without getting too far into it, the next-generation science standards do have emphasis on engineering, which is a big piece of STEM. We don't want to lose sight of the S, T, and M, but engineering is emphasized a little bit more in elementary school than it used to be. Those standards have not become part of New Jersey's standards yet. However, and we've been going back and forth on this a lot, my colleagues and I, who are approaching curriculum writing, and we feel strongly that we can align really these two different sets of standards, because the next generation science are national standards. We had New Jersey folks on that committee. Most of the states did. So we're going to have one eye on the next generation standards because we do believe they're coming into the picture soon. But we certainly will be compliant with the current standards. So that's why we'd like to put some like-minded and really science-savvy teachers in a room and talk about how to integrate those intelligently and turn them into hands-on activities, and all with the help and supervision and support of an I-STEM professional like Chris Anderson from the center. So really excited about that. And there may be one other school that we'll be working with too. A lot of people are waiting for those next generation standards to become official, but there's no reason that you can't. If you think about it, our world language standards, we have, and the SIP people will tell you this, the curriculum people from the board, you can have your approved standards, but you can also introduce more, as Mr. Greer does when he uses the national world language standards as well, even though they're not the New Jersey standards. He embeds them. So those are the kinds of things we learn from good curriculum writing in our district that we'd like to then apply to some of our new projects. So very excited about that. That will cover half of the, K-5, that's half the district. So once we create a curriculum that we're really excited about and that we take the good time to supply and provide professional support for the staff and materials and resources, then we feel that we're really building the strong foundation. And we continue to look at 6 through 12 and what that STEM path would look like. So it's just a lot of really fun stuff going on. So you see our fun faces again, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
So I could not be more pleased to hear what's happening with these activities, and especially the new curriculum writing that you're going to embark on in a measured way. And I would encourage you to seek and welcome conversations about the new infusion ideas of the arts within STEM. Some are calling it STEAM. We're certainly not losing focus on the engineering, mathematics, core process of STEM, science and technology, bolstering it. But knowing that that brain activity and creative problem solving is also occurring rapidly within the artistic community, and it's a very correlated work of,
Right.
Intellectual activity. So please, be mindful and open to the opportunities that might present itself along the way, while keeping the real focus on STEM. And
We definitely will. Actually, as you were saying, a couple of light bulbs went off for me.
Okay, good.
Good, yeah. Thank you.
I think this is all really, really exciting. I was wondering if you could just talk to the Kane University partnership
Sure.
that you're developing.
Okay. So in addition, another reason why Kane was interested in working with us on the camp is they named us in a NSF grant, National Science Foundation grant. So, grants, especially with the National Science Foundation, they're high, very high, there's a lot of competition for those. So, but we are excited because Kane put months into building and we helped quite a bit in building a grant that they thought could go through. And the point of that grant is there's a lot of this going on out there too, to use summer camps as leverage not leverage, but sort of training grounds and places to create these modules, these units that would then be transferred into schools. Let's just use the literacy initiative real quickly as an example. That was a massive undertaking, and again, very proud of the staff that have adopted it, and I'm proud of the support from the board and the professional development we've provided. For all indicators suggest that we've made real good progress with that, and we're eager to see more data when it comes back. But that was one of those things where we were writing units while teaching, and that's a good way to do that. With the science, we figured, it's a lot. So here we can have core people, and they'll be bringing the turnkeying it and bring their experiences in writing these units back at grade level meetings and staff meetings. So it's not like they're going to create this workbook of units and then hand it off. They'll be demonstrating them, and they'll be trying them out and infusing them and putting their toes in the water. So the way that this grant works is Kane is very interested in becoming in this area, becoming a big part of reaching out to students and getting them involved so that they can pursue these kinds of careers. So there are 5 districts that they've named in this grant, and Westfield's one of them. And the idea is to pull these our staff together that work the camp, let's say, and some others that we can designate and work throughout the year doing that. But they'll also be invited to participate in courses that are designed to reinforce their classroom knowledge. Our teachers are really knowledgeable. When we first talked with Kana, in fact, Dr. Dolan reminded me to be really careful about letting them know exactly where our teachers already stand. So there are certain, for example, math. It's assumed that most math teachers at lower than high school levels are not math experts, but ours mostly are. So they took all of that into account. So there's a lot of customizing on the part of Kane to what they can do to work with our staff in these other districts. So if named, there'll be all kinds of resources provided, materials, and whether it's the robotics type of equipment, and it's exciting. The collaboration alone among all the districts and having that supervised and funded by the National Science Foundation is pretty exciting stuff. And I feel like, if that thing launches, it's a 3-year deal. We'll be right at like sort of the heartbeat of generating all this kind of resources for teachers and like a clearinghouse for all these kinds of great activities. But I should then just remind us all, because I get excited about it too, the National Science Foundation grants are very competitive. So, our fingers are crossed. I think it was a really solid grant, and we'll keep you posted on it. September-ish is when they'll hear something about it. I thought that, yeah.
Yeah, and then I know the forensics and the exercise science were added to the high school curriculum. And there's also been some talk of other courses that might be added to the high school. So do you want to talk to
Sure,
that a bit?
sure. We have another course in the works that we're bringing to SIP soon. It's architecture, design, intro to design, introduction to design and engineering and architecture. And that is a document or a curriculum we've been working on for some time. It's actually gone through a couple of drafts, and we'll be bringing it to SIP soon. Then our next stage is to look at, we were hoping really to launch it in September. After speaking with the teacher, looking at the curriculum and instructional council, there's still a lot of work that has to go into picking the resources for it. So I think we're going to need to continue working on putting units together and making sure that when we fly it well. So that's one area of coursework for the high school. And then we continue to be interested in looking into computer science opportunities. So we don't have those lined up for this year yet, but a lot of investigations involved in it.
Anyone else?
Great. Thanks.
All right,
Thank you very
so-
much.
Thank you.
All right. I'd ask the board to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on April 29, 2014, May 6, 2014, and the private minutes of April 29, 2014, and May 6, 2014. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I will abstain from May 6th. I wasn't at the meeting. With that, we'll move to personnel. Mark?
I'd like the board to consider personnel personnel items 1 through 25. Second, please.
Second.
Lucy, thank you. Dr. Dolan?
Yes, actually, tonight I am announcing with regret the retirement of 3 staff members who have given a total of 77 years to Westfield students. Marilyn Torriello began her career in Westfield in 1999, and a year later she became a resource room teacher at Roosevelt. Her professionalism, compassion, and work ethic stand as hallmarks of her tenure as a special education teacher. She works hard with her students to help them see connections between what they learn and the world around them. Marilyn is an enthusiastic supporter of the Roosevelt community and a proud parent of 4 Westfield High School graduates. She is delighted that her grandchildren are in the Westfield schools and looks forward to spending more time with them and the rest of her family. Kathy Kopak is also a resource room teacher. For the last 22 years, Kathy has been a special education educator at Edison School. She has taught social studies in the iPrep program and has provided both in-class and pull-out support to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Kathy is a strong advocate for special needs students and has represented the special education department of the Edison STEM committee. One contribution that she points to with pride was the collaboration with a fine arts teacher to create a class about opera that students enjoyed for a number of years. She says she will miss her students, her colleagues, and her friends at Edison. And Les Jacobson. He has been a math teacher at Westfield High School for 39 years. He has taught calculus, pre-calculus, and was a member of the Project 79 team for 14 years. A kind and caring gentleman who is proud of his Norwegian roots, Les encourages his students and new teachers in his department to love the critical thinking and problem-solving skills that are learned in math. He is a valued member of the high school and was instrumental in the formation of the National Honor Society, where he has served as advisor for decades. Les is pleased that his children graduated from the Westfield schools. He looks forward to teaching after he retires as an adjunct at a local college, as a tutor, and as an SAT coach. And we wish all three of these educators all the best in their retirements.
Thank you. Any questions? Jeannie?
Yes. Dr. Dolan, would you comment on number 7, please? And your plans for the master technology teachers?
Certainly. So this is the, I believe, 3rd year that we will have master technology teachers, 2 master technology teachers, one focusing on the elementary grades and one focusing on the intermediate and high school grades. The recommendation is for the teachers who are in those positions this year to continue. That would be Janine Gotko and Adam Peasy. They have worked very hard this year as we begin the transition towards Edline. We have been successful in the first phase of that implementation, and there is much work to go. Paul Pinero and Dana Sullivan and I were talking about working with them for planning over the summer so that teachers can continue to have support over the summer as we plan for the next phase of implementation of Edline. So we're very happy that they are willing to continue. I have to tell you, they are 2 enthused people who enjoy technology, who are great at providing professional development and support for our teachers throughout the district.
I just wanted to add that I continue to be very excited about all of the appointments, but specifically Janine and Adam, and I think it's really incredible. I mean, when you get a new position like that, it's kind of rare to just hit a home run out of the box, and both of these folks have done that and have been, I think, really part of making amazing change on the technology side for our district. So I'm, absolutely, if I could vote 20 times yes on number 7, I would. I'm really, really excited.
We'll take the 1. That's
Yeah,
good.
okay.
Okay, I got another question. So, Dr. Dolan, I'm glad to hear that our master technology teachers will, in fact, be moving forward, and that the 2 individuals who have been in that position will remain in the position. Can you enlighten us as to how you see the position evolving over time, or these individuals? We're still calling them master technology teachers, and I understand while they're not instructionally within the classroom, they are teaching teachers and they are providing instructional support. So help me a little bit here. Where are we going with this?
So I think the system as we have it now seems to be working well. I'll certainly take advice from others who are involved in it, but it has provided flexibility, and it has provided support for teachers as we make so many different changes in technology. I also think one of the issues with technology, as we've all discussed many times at this table, is it's not as though we really know where it's going to be in 2 years. I mean, we can all read all of what's written about it, and we can participate, but we don't know. I think in this area you have to continue to keep a bit flexible as we prepare. So I think right now, for next year, this is going to serve us well again. Could the positions change in the future? Sure. Yeah, they could. They could in a number of ways. But I think for next year, this system is still functioning well for our needs.
Good.
I would add that this would be something that we would continue to be having ongoing discussion in the technology committee, and getting your input and certainly getting Janine and Adam's input I look forward to the day that we can have 10. So it's a great
Mitch,
start.
do they attend your meetings?
They have come to some of the meetings. I think it kind of depends on what the discussion is. Some of the meetings tend to be very technical, where we need Brian Walker and we're talking about infrastructure work. But certainly when we're talking on the curriculum side, more and more, they're they're always welcome to be there, certainly. And actually, I'll make sure that for next year, they get an invitation to every meeting. So I want them to feel, I don't want them to feel they have to go to another meeting, but, you know, I do appreciate their input.
They were at our meetings to support the Edline transition of the website, so for the planning, rollout, functionality, reviews. So the last couple of times that we've met, they were very helpful in helping us understand where we were going, what was happening, timelines, and so forth. But it hadn't been the norm up until that point when we were introducing web differences, website differences.
So we're confident that they'll have time over the summer to do what needs to be done?
Yes, we are. Again, the details are still being worked out, but yes.
Dr. Dolan, I couldn't agree more that this is not a job that is done, nor is it an annual position that basically can be closed off and reopened. So I am singularly pleased to hear your support of the position on an ongoing basis, and especially on the value of experienced personnel in the position.
Right.
As long as they are themselves very comfortable with not going back into the classroom at the moment, and see the value of what they're doing to enhance their own capability. I can't think of a better way to keep helping them evolve in this area and help the district. Right. So I'm supportive.
Anybody else? Dana, please.
Rich McKessick?
Yes.
Chrissy Biegler?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Brendan Gallagher? Roseanne Kirkland?
Yeah.
Jenny Lights?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes, I abstained from number 23.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
That's it.
Anything else? All right, we'll move to facilities. The Facilities Committee did meet last Friday, and there was one item that we wanted to bring to the board's attention. Dana, why don't I start, and you can fill in the blanks. As we've discussed at the board table a few times, at the end of the last school year, the state of New Jersey did make available potential grants for facilities projects for school districts in New Jersey. We, at that time, went through our 5-year facilities plan and made many applications to the state for projects that we knew were coming, whether they were things we needed immediately or things we may want to do in the future. And we were, as we've discussed, we had 36 grants approved. We went through in some detail those grants when we had our budget discussions over the past, 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks. And we talked about the grants we were going to build into the budget for facilities projects this summer and next summer. And they included things like the boiler at Roosevelt and other large projects. It's important to note that the grants cover 40% of a project's cost, and then the district would pick up the other 60%. One of the things that we put in our applications was air conditioning at all of the schools. So all the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high school, to the extent we knew that air conditioning was needed, so generally speaking, in the classrooms and then the public areas. And we were, I would say, surprised when the state came back and offered grants for most, if not all, of that air conditioning that we had requested. In fact, the total was millions of dollars in grants, over $5 million, I think. So we looked many times in the Facilities Committee at whether or not it made sense to propose to the board that we air condition either classrooms or public spaces in the many schools. And as we broke that down, we concluded a few things. One, the area of most need/complaint, I think from a cooling temperature perspective, was in the elementary school classrooms. And as we looked at the classrooms, it became more apparent to us that in recent years, PTOs, fortunately and primarily, had been donating funds for room air conditioners. And the district then came along and installed them, which, you know, on the one hand sounds easy, you put them in the window, but they obviously need to be specially installed. The electric wiring needs to be run. So it becomes a bigger project, but we were very appreciative of the PTO efforts to provide the air conditioning, and we were able to make accommodations. At this point, most of the elementary school classrooms are or will be by, I think, September, air conditioned. So then we looked at other spaces in the high school and the middle schools, so remaining classrooms in those schools that aren't air conditioned and the public spaces, and had a breakdown which we provided to the board by category of what it would cost to finance the district's 60% portion for those spaces. And we really concluded as a committee that we just couldn't justify recommending to the board that we trump the other project needs for air conditioning. As much as we'd like to do it, as much as it's desirable, with the growing list of facilities needs, we couldn't justify that recommendation, and so we didn't recommend that. But what we did want to propose to the board was allowing PTOs to take advantage of those grants if they can continue fundraising efforts. And as I said, we have a breakdown of numbers. They aren't small numbers, but they are numbers, particularly at the elementary level, that, for example, the multi-purpose rooms, PTOs may want to try to fund. And so we have prepared a letter to PTO presidents. We circulated it to the board today, really just to inform them of where we are with respect to the air conditioning grants, and we'll give each PTO their specific dollar amount of the cost to air condition, what the state would fund, and what they would need to fund through fundraising, and they would have a year approximately to do that fundraising. So we wanted to get the message out, give them that time if they want it. And so the Facilities Committee is recommending that we go out to the PTOs. The recommendation is for all the middle schools, intermediary schools, and the high school, and so we can discuss whether that's the right path, whether it should be all those schools.
Do you or Dana want to just clarify what kind of air conditioning is covered by the grants? Because windows or not, window air conditioners or not, that might be just informative for everybody.
Sure, yeah, good point. Go ahead.
These would be central air conditioning with the proper ventilation, so it's what's required by code. Window units or anything else, anything less than the full air conditioning that provides the ventilation wouldn't be covered by the grant. So if the PTOs decide to take on the project, it would have to be the project as designed by our architect.
Yes.
So I have a few questions. I have one comment and a few questions. I'm not sure that this letter, I just think it needs to, that what you just said probably should be clarified up front, because I was confused when I read it. But I'm not opposed to it. I guess I have some concerns. Mostly because, so we have a window of time for the schools to raise the money till May 1st of 2015, and either because maybe some PTOs have already committed fundraising efforts for that period of time, or it's just a fact that some PTOs don't generate as much in terms of their fundraising as other PTOs. So I am concerned that we're going to end up with some disparity in the district, that we're going to have 3 of the 6 high school or elementary schools with central air, or one of the intermediate schools with central air and one not. So I don't know. I understand that this is probably, likely, given our budget restraints, the only way that we can get some central air in the district, but I do have some concern about doing something that will result in disparity, that will result in, you know, all the fun things that come with that, whether it's real or perception or whatever.
And that's a very valid point, and we struggle with that in the Facilities Committee, not just on this issue, but historically. There's always been an issue of equity, and particularly when it comes to fundraising and donations to the schools. I'll give my opinion, and then other committee members can speak, but in my view, where we came out was, it was sort of, given the way economics have changed over time and the realization of what our buildings need, we have started to shift to a model that inherently requires fundraising for larger projects that that might be wants, but just you can't justify not doing other things in lieu of or ahead of. And we also, given that, and the realization that these grants are probably a one-time thing, and it is 40% of a large number that the grants would cover, we couldn't justify just saying, no. For the sake of ensuring that, some school, we don't end up, some schools are here and some aren't, we didn't want to just say, okay, nobody can try to raise funds for these grants. And the other thing is at the elementary level, remember that was a concern, that the classrooms are primarily covered. So you're right, it could be that some schools end up with central air in public spaces, but we do feel that the PTOs have really gotten us to a point across the schools, across the elementary schools, of air-conditioned classrooms, which was a prime concern. Does anybody else want to comment on that point before we go to other
So
questions?
the central air is just for the multipurpose rooms that you're talking about? Because not the classrooms. The classrooms all have window units?
At the elementary.
At the elementary
At the
level,
elementary
yeah.
level.
The high
So-
school and middle schools have a breakdown for remaining classrooms as well. I think those are, I don't remember the number, for like a third of those are air-conditioned, maybe, plus or
Roughly,
minus.
yeah.
Did the facilities committee talk about, let's say, 4 of the 6 elementary schools can raise the money? Would the district then see if they could work to make up the difference in the elementary schools that couldn't?
Yeah, we didn't agree to recommend anything to the board. We did
Right.
say, let's see where we are at the end.
We kicked around, just in the spirit of talking about all options, we talked about, hey, go to the schools and ask them all to fundraise and kick it all into a centralized fund, and then we would divvy up the dollars to try to deal with the equity. And I think we came away with that wasn't a great model, because it's harder to get people perhaps to fundraise for something that's so centralized and not for something that they may get a benefit from. So, but that was definitely one of the conversations that came up.
We had multiple conversations that also centered on what happens when and if dollars don't come up to meet the requirements. And of course, that is an option that we address at the time.
Right.
And we don't know what the recommendation might be, whether funds would be provided by the district, whether we would come up with some, halfway or 3/4 of the way through the fundraising period, whether we would assess a different model to help. But we also noted that to the extent that this is seen as a real strong opportunity, that schools and their communities or their neighborhoods might want to get behind it in a very, very strong way. And I understand that the timing is very difficult, and some schools may already have made commitments for funds that they have already raised, and it might be that in a 2-year period, that's what they could raise the amount required, but if they've already made some allocation commitments,
Or they've spent it all on the window units, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
or they've spent it on window units, then it may, then, we don't have timing options as a board either, because the grants are
Right.
given and we have to commit to them in a certain period of time with money in hand, and we know that. So it's some trial balloons, but we felt that this was an equitable start.
And just to throw out some more facts, and I think Dana gave us a lot of information, however we've gotten here, we've got a lot of elementary school classrooms that have window units that were paid for by PTOs at various times. However, I believe that in order to, Rich, called this out in his comments, in order to get those installed, we spent, the district spends somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 to $500 for the actual labor, for running the power to the power lines to each of the units, because the rooms are not set up to do that. And then, just kind of back of the envelope, we asked, well, what does it cost to run a unit? It's a very inefficient way to run air conditioning. There's, I think the number came out to be $425 on average for a season to run one of those things. So although the PTOs were certainly, we couldn't have done it without them, were contributing you know, the $500 for the unit, it was costing us now, you know, another $5 to install, and then in perpetuity, you know, another $500
Right.
or so in electricity.
And our first focus really was the elementary schools, primarily because we recognize that the teachers, the children are in a classroom for the major portion of the day. They don't have a lot of options for moving around. If they have a central space that's similarly cool, they have a little bit of opportunity to move in and out of that central space and get out of their classroom, especially those on the second floors, that even if when air conditioned and as air conditioned, will still get hot. So we had considerable conversation.
Is it a use it or lose it kind of thing?
Yes.
Yes.
And is there a time frame?
Yes.
It's 18 months from when we were notified that we received the grant, which was December, January, so we have till about June of next year. So we asked them to notify us May 1st so that we had time to, because we actually have to execute the grant then and do something.
And the money has to be used obviously for just this
Yes.
purpose,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So,
And the state will literally inspect
Right.
and make sure.
but the district, your point, which I totally understand and agree with, is that, you know, we have these other priorities. But it's use it or lose it, so it's kind of a tough, it's a really tough call. What, if you had to say what the top 3 priorities are, it's a question I think you might get asked by some of the PTOs, like what would be the top 3 priorities that would be above air conditioning? From a facility
You're
standpoint?
accepting 2 grants that are for boilers, which are
Right.
large grants.
Okay,
Like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
So I would say those are your first top 2 that
Right.
we took. And one of them is actually underway, they're gonna be done this summer, and one will be done next summer. And then we also accepted all of the security grants that we were awarded.
Right.
And the only ones that we're not accepting are the air conditioning because of the dollar amount. So we've utilized every other grant that we were given, only just not the air conditioning because of the dollar amount.
But Dana, can you put out the numbers so maybe everybody has a good perspective? If we were looking at all of the common area, the multipurpose rooms, and what would the local portion be?
Just assuming that all of the common areas at the elementary level are $771,000. So that's assuming we didn't do any classrooms, just the gyms and the multipurpose rooms.
And that's the
whatever.
local portion.
Right.
And then intermediate and high school, the classrooms and the common areas are $6.2 million. So total, it's $7 million.
So we're talking about air conditioning the gyms, basically.
Basically, yes.
right.
In the elementary level, yes.
And
At the
how much
elementary
is,
level, they need to be aired. That's where they eat lunch. I mean, it's not just for gym class.
The multipurpose rooms.
Yeah.
Assemblies, meetings.
and how expensive is that gonna be?
That's the
That's what
Well,
the
that's-
plus- that's what
No,
the plus is.
no, to
No, the
run it.
operating cost, that was
Yeah.
gonna be my next question.
Well, that'll be expensive.
Right.
That's,
I don't have those costs. The architect told me he couldn't do that.
Those are big spaces
Yes.
with, are the windows all securely, closed and doors remain, I mean, it's, okay.
is there a way to figure out that operating cost before we say, put this out to the PTOs?
They could do some kind of a rough estimate. I'm told he really can't do a real estimate unless he
Yeah.
knows exactly what kind of unit we're purchasing.
And how
what the-
careful people are with keeping doors shut and
Right,
turning them off at the right
Sure.
time and,
right.
yeah,
Proceeding with the projects requires a
timeliness.
commitment to that kind of cultural change, as
Mhm.
to when you make decisions about when you use
Right.
air conditioning, how you use it, and then how you treat the environment so that everybody
Right.
benefits from efficient use and not overuse.
Would we allow outside organizations to use the air conditioning when they
That
do
wasn't
the gym?
discussed.
We didn't.
We didn't
Okay.
discuss that.
And I guess we don't need to discuss that now.
If it comes to
Yeah.
be, then we certainly can
Right.
discuss it.
Right. Okay.
I mean, there's no doubt it's a significant, we need air conditioning. I mean, we had kids last week taking the NJ Ask and, you know, sweltering conditions but it sounds like our classrooms are being taken care of at the elementary school.
Are there any schools in particular that there's many classrooms that don't have it or that aren't up to par with the other elementary schools? Do we know?
They don't all have it yet, but they're working on it. By sometime next year, I would think that every classroom at the elementary, give or take a couple, are gonna, yeah.
Are we voting on something tonight, or are we just talking?
We need to vote on it, actually.
Well, you don't have to, but we have to, at some point, have a decision if we're going to allow the PTOs to do this. I mean, you don't really need a formal vote, but you need.
And sooner rather than later because of the time crunch.
Right. Because if
Well,
we're
and they're
gonna skip, we're gonna let them
Right.
start fundraising, we do it now and not wait till September to tell them we're doing it.
I will accept the recommendation of the facilities committee.
Yep, I will.
Can we do a formal
Sure.
as well?
So, let's be clear about what the question is.
Yeah, does it, yeah.
This is, what's exactly the question?
To adopt the facilities committee recommendation that we let PTOs, that we offer the opportunity to PTOs to fundraise for the district's portion of air conditioning within their respective schools.
I just want to add something to that. As you'll notice in the letter, I added, I don't know if you noticed, that they have to consult with principals. Because I have a feeling from a discussion I had with one principal that not all principals think that's going to be the wisest use of money. So you may want to put I don't know if you want stronger wording in there about approval of the principal or whatever, just to give the principal some say.
And the recommendation of the facilities committee was to allow the middle and high school to also go out to fundraise for central air in the multi-purpose areas
And
classrooms.
and classrooms.
Right.
Okay?
Those are
Or some portion.
Right,
large
right,
numbers, yeah.
okay.
So I just have a question. So does the central air have to be used in the multipurpose room? Or is that just where we're figuring it's needed because the classrooms are being taken care of?
Well, yeah, that's the only area that's not air conditioned at this point.
So if the window units aren't efficient and it's costing them so much to run it, does it make sense to put central air in a bunch of classrooms and a hall, like a section instead? And that's why I was asking, like, how many
Yeah.
classrooms don't have it? The ones, if there's a wing that doesn't have it in one school, can we put central air in that area? I think that was done in one of the elementary schools.
Well, those are cost considerations. We started with the request to give us costs for central air, and that was the grant proposal application that we filled out.
Right.
As we backed off of the cost of that, we looked at the cost of individual units to cool classrooms that would not qualify for grants,
Okay.
and whether that was a more effective use of dollars as a trade-off for using state dollars from a
Right.
grant, because we can't afford, as an operating budget, we can't afford either at this point.
No, I understand that.
But we were looking to see what might be a more appropriate appeal to a parent community.
I'm just concerned with
Isn't
what Gretchen said as well about the disparity between the schools and what school may have it and what school, one principal decides, well, we don't need it, another principal decides we do need it.
Right.
I don't know if that's
I'm
even.
not particularly happy with the decision
I was
being left in the principal's
say, I'm
hands.
not sure
If
if that
we're
should
making
be-
a recommendation as a board, then
Either they all do
and the
it or
money
they
gets
don't.
raised,
Yeah.
the principal
Well,
has
so
the.
that wasn't part of the recommendation. Dana's just noting that, so we haven't really discussed that yet.
Right.
I mean, my view of fundraising is that I think the PTOs, as a matter of course, do work with the principals to determine needs and priorities. I'm not aware that any principal sort of trumps what the PTOs want to go raise funds for. I mean,
Well, they usually
Yes.
It
do
is
that.
always part, it is
Yeah.
always part of a conversation, just as you say, that it should be discussed between the PTO and the.
Right.
Right.
The district can't accept funds if they haven't been approved by the principal, if they're coming from the PTO. That's part of our fundraising policy.
Right, but I don't think he should get to decide for that building, or she, sorry, that this is where I want our money, fundraising money to go to.
But it's always part of the conversation, right.
Right,
And
I'm
it's a
saying we
com-
should either collectively decide for this following year, this is what we're working towards, or,
Well, we're not really saying that either, because we're
Right.
giving the PTOs,
Right.
we're not telling them they have to fundraise
Right.
for this.
It's possible we could even reference the wording that's in the policy, because you're right, the policy for fundraising talks about it in some way, so we could look at that.
Lucy, I think too, part of what happened was that these things were happening in tandem. I think that a lot of PTOs, not all, but many had started purchasing window units, probably before we even went out to grant. And that was kind of on rolling. And then as some schools found out that other schools were doing it, they started doing it. So in some ways, that was ahead of our grant application. And then I don't think we ever really anticipated we would get. I mean, I don't know, maybe we did, but that the state would say yes. And so in some ways now we're trying to, if this is already done, then in making a decision about the grants, some of the window unit stuff is already, the money's already been spent, the units already exist. So it's not like we can, swap it.
Dana, I have a question about the intermediate schools and the high school. The grants that we proposed for the classrooms are not individual classroom units, right?
No, it's central air conditioning in the classroom. So these numbers that you're looking at for the intermediate and the high school are
For the
central-
classroom,
yes,
for the classroom
For the
parts.
classroom part as well as the other parts, yes.
Right, so,
That's why those numbers are so high.
okay, so there is a separate estimate that we could provide
We have a separate estimate.
for
at the-
classrooms at the intermediate,
That's what I
at the
was
secondary levels, the intermediate and the high school, if it was strictly classroom by classroom individual units, and they weren't grant funded.
Right.
But we're not
But we
talking,
were not going in that direction.
we're not
Yeah.
talking about that tonight,
Because it-
but I just wanted to
yeah.
make that clarification,
Because
that
they're
this is,
not an efficient way to operate. so
no, I
these
understand.
big
It's
schools.
not our recommendation
Right.
that we go in that direction.
Okay, so what are we agreeing to or not agreeing to?
Well, so the facilities committee recommendation is that the PTOs, that we notify the PTOs of the grants and allow them to fundraise for the district's portion of the cost of the air conditioning for their respective schools. That's the facilities committee recommendation to the board. Question is, does the board accept that or not?
Okay.
Somebody moving to approve that?
I will.
I second.
Thank you. Dana?
Rich Matesic?
Yes.
Lucy Beegler?
I'm not sure.
Not an option.
It's not one of your
You could
choices.
abstain.
You can
There's a
abstain.
yes, there's a no, and an abstention.
I guess it's a yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Kirstead?
Yes.
Jimmy Light?
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
I assume we're still voting on the same.
Yes.
Just just checking.
SRO.
Just SRO. No. Nice try. This is a yes.
Thought we could shorten the meeting.
All right, thank you. Anything else for facilities committee?
No, just, we're meeting, I'm meeting sometime this week, next week, with the roofers, the new roofers. Just as an FYI, they are probably going to, we have two roofers, two different companies doing all of the buildings, 4 contracts, but 2 roofing companies. So the one company wants to do this building on weekends, starting next weekend, after, not this coming
Oh,
weekend,
great.
but the weekend after. And they plan to be done here by the end of June. So let's hope that that goes through, and then that'll allow them to move to the schools as soon as schools close, so.
So just a quick comment. So
Good idea.
there is a lot going on in the park across the street, so it won't interfere with that, right?
Yes, now we're meeting with them, they're aware of that, we'll tell them again, and they should be, this is a relatively simple job, so they should be not even anywhere near over there.
They're all simple.
I know.
And they won't
High
be,
school wasn't simple.
they won't be tearing out roofs at 7 a.m. on Sundays, right?
No, we told them they have to follow the code. The problem is that in this building, we really don't want them tearing off the roof when people are here, and people are here 12 months a year.
Yeah,
So for the tear-off part,
right,
it really makes sense
You've
for
gotta
them
do
to do it on
weekends.
the weekends without interrupting staff.
right. That's a good point. All right, thank you. We'll go to long-range planning. Ginny?
Yes, Dr. Dolan, thank you for putting out a press release on the topic that I read the announcement about, which is registration reminder for new first grade students in Westfield Public Schools. That went out on May 13th, and I saw it highlighted in a number of local newspapers. And then I guess the question is, are we going to put another long-range planning meeting on our calendar? It's getting very busy in June, but let's look for a date. So we don't lose some momentum.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Policies?
I have no report. We have a meeting next Wednesday evening at 7:30. So I will see the members of the policy committee then.
Thank you. Curriculum, instruction, and programs. Roseanne?
I'd like to ask the board to approve the following district field trips as per attachment 4, which was at your seat. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Gretchen. Any comments or questions?
Richard Jessic?
Yes.
Lucy Beegler?
Yes.
Mark Friedman?
Yes.
Roseanne Querstead?
Yes.
Jenny Light?
Yes.
Gretchen Olich?
Yes.
Mitch Slater?
Yes.
And the SIP committee has a meeting next Thursday at 1 o'clock. That's all.
Thank you very much. Finance, Mark.
I'd like the board to consider finance items numbers 1 through 21. Second. Ginny, thank you. Questions? Dana?
Are you doing,
Are we discussing number 4, or are we just voting?
You raise it.
Bring it up.
Okay,
I'd like
I
to
thought
raise
we're getting a presentation. Am I mistaken?
Yeah.
No. Well, are we gonna have the presentation before we vote, or
Yeah, yes.
just?
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Just-
So,
Tried.
It's the plan.
so I can certainly start, is that good?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
All right, here we go. So, finance item number 4 asks that we continue our partnership with the town to have a school resource officer. Since we've been able to have a school resource officer since September, I have to say I think that it's a perfect title as I think back on the year, because the person absolutely provides resources for the district. For example, Jeff Johnson, our school resource officer, serves on the district's emergency preparedness committee, which meets every month, which visits the various schools in the district, walks through, making observations, making sure that we are all compliant with all the recommendations we have for security. He also, as recently as last week, served on the Code of Conduct Committee as we reviewed that policy and regulation. He was representative for us. And all of our schools complete one security drill and one fire drill each month, and he has assisted the various schools as they prepare for the numerous types of security drills that are practiced. So those are some of the examples of what happens district-wide. But the fact is that the majority of the school resource officer's time is spent at the high school. And so for that reason, we have 2 of our administrators from the high school who are going to talk to us. We have our supervisor of counseling, Maureen Mazaris, and we also have assistant principal Jim DeSarno to talk a bit more about our school resource officer.
Let me begin by saying I've learned a lot about air conditioning. and just go ahead timely. And really appreciate the detailed conversation and thought that goes into a decision that seems so simple from my end, so I appreciate that. Getting to an equally interesting topic. Jim and I are here tonight to represent the collective thoughts and experiences of a year with a school resource officer. And we've spent some time thinking about the best way to present it, and so we've divided our task in half. One, my task is just to describe a little bit of some of the hard-to-describe achievements of a school resource officer, and Jim can certainly tell you some of the more detailed and precise ones. But I wanted to start, I was here just under a year ago. It was just under a year ago to speak to you about my experience as a student assistance counselor working with a school resource officer. And at that time, I listed a lot of the things that I remembered about the advantages of that and the ways in which the collaboration with Detective Allen made me more effective, made the work that I do have a greater impact, and made me feel very supported in those things that I was not an expert in, and he was. At the same time, I really listened very carefully and with, I hope, an open mind to the concerns expressed by board members and members of the community who were vocal and had a lot of thoughts and ideas and concerns about the position of a school resource officer. I noted especially the concerns about the anxiety that the presence of an armed policeman might have on students and staff and the impact of that presence on what we call school climate. And so tonight, I welcome the opportunity to come back here to return to the topic and bring it to the present. I can speak now not from memory of 10 years ago, but from memory of just weeks and months, and even, I can say, hours ago. School climate and school safety matters. It matters to you, it matters to me, it matters to parents, it matters to the community, but most importantly, it matters to children. And as I walk through the high school, I see Officer Johnson's presence as a positive one. He greets students with a warm smile. They seek him out. They look to him to tell good news. They look to him for questions. They look to him for counsel in the ways that he is able to do that with the experience, training, and knowledge that he has. He connects with kids. His presence and his personality is not in his uniform, which, yes, includes a gun, which has remained, I can confirm, securely in his holster and draws no attention from anybody anymore. I see no evidence of increased anxiety. In fact, I actually see and sense the reverse. Jim is going to give you a long, detailed list of a lot of the things that Jeff has done. I really want to try to continue to talk about some of the unseen things, hard to describe, by giving you the comments from some comments from Margaret Teitelbaum, who works so closely with him in the nurse's office, and with just a couple of examples of my interactions with him. Margaret says she's the coordinator of nursing, as you know, in a school and a high school nurse. Just yesterday, she described Jeff as invaluable. He is always the first responder in any health emergency. He seems to sense when they are happening, sometimes before we even know about it. It comes from his training and his watchful eye. His knowledge of the law as it pertains to medical emergencies is paramount to us in being effective. His ability to help us transport students to healthcare facilities is essential. And his understanding of laws governing infractions in our code of conduct are examples of his ability to support us as recently as the code of conduct meeting just last week. I can cite multiple examples of his assistance to counselors, but I can't because most of them are confidential and belong within the space of our offices. But I can say, with clearly and with certainty, that he has worked with us in instances of conflict, peer conflict, legal issues with students, truancy, family conflicts, substance abuse interventions and support, suicide intervention, and truancy. He's made home visits to assist families in crisis because we have asked him to. He's visited homes to bring students back to school who didn't want to come. I can give you one very crystal clear example of an afternoon I spent with Jeff, and I call him Jeff. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in my office with a student who I know well, a student who in that moment was absolutely, and I am not being overdramatic when I say crippled in crisis. Crippled, sad, sorrowful. He was angry, he was distraught, he was self-injurious, he was distrustful, and he was scared. And frankly, after 27 years, I was worried, really worried. He was a risk for suicide, and there was no doubt about that. He needed immediate psychiatric attention. He needed to get to support as quickly as we could get him there. In an instant, Jeff was at my side. And with the support of that parent, and with the agreement of the student, who knew Officer Johnson because he had been to his home once before to support him and his family in a particularly difficult evening. With his consent, Officer Johnson arranged for the rescue squad to transport that student to the hospital discreetly, with respect to his pride, respectfully, and quickly. Without his help, that student, and I know this from experience, we could have waited hours for that student's parents to be able to get to the school from their workplace in New York City and in southern New Jersey. He would have waited hours more in the emergency room for assistance. Hours that in a teen's life allows denial of their needs, and fear of exposure to distance them from the help that they need. The second example I'll give you is far less dramatic, and it happened actually this afternoon. A student came to my office and asked if I had a few minutes, and I sat back thinking it was about me, and I said, "Sure, how can I help you?" And she said, "Actually, I don't need you." I was a little deflated, but I got over it. I was confused. She started, and I know this student well. She continued by saying that she had heard that I might be speaking to you tonight about whether or not we should keep the school resource officer. And she wanted me to say this to you. She wanted you to know, and I always try to put a student's voice at every presentation. She wanted you to know that Officer Johnson has helped and supported her this year and is in fact the person she trusts and relies on the most at Westfield High School. And will you please tell the board I really mean that? So with these two experiences, I can reaffirm, without a doubt, the need for a school resource officer and the value that that position brings to our school. I also really have to say that that position is made even better by the young man who fills that position. I know.
I tried to beat her up here because I knew she would speak so well. she's a little faster than me. It's been a long day. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to just discuss some of the roles that Officer Johnson plays in our building and outside our building in the other schools throughout the district. Right off the bat, the relationships he's developing with our students, and not just students with issues or students in crisis. All of our students is strong, and it will improve with the experience and with the time he spends in our building. He's been a guest speaker in many of our classes, health classes, our driver theory classes, English classes, math classes. He's spoken on a variety of topics. The law, obviously, but other topics too. He's worked with our administration to solve problems within our building. Me personally, he's been a big help with our security drills and our overall school security, putting plans together. One of the biggest, he's a huge resource when it comes to trends in substance abuse and the law. We do get chances as administrators to attend, and Union County has courses and classes that are very informative, but to have someone like Officer Johnson translate that for educators has been a huge asset to our building. He works with students in crisis extremely well, as you heard from Ms. Mazzarese, responding to students' homes, truant students, motor vehicle issues, with which, if you've had students in our high school and know the issues with parking, and you obviously do, it is a big issue. Again, responding to all medical calls has been something that he has been on top of all year long. He is called to other schools throughout the year, mostly the intermediate schools, to help with issues or situations where an officer can and should be a help. His presence in the building is a plus. Students have an opportunity to speak to him about the law, social issues, but also things that are not law related. An opportunity, he can talk sports with anybody. He'll talk about the activities in town. As a former graduate of Westfield High School, it's nice to have someone in there that has shared similar experiences with our students, and it gives our students an opportunity to see a different side of a police officer, which As a parent, it is something that's important for many of our students who only see the police officer in one specific light. He attends sporting events, after-school activities, nighttime events, even participates in some of those. He's really jumped into our school culture, and that's been a huge plus. He's actually assisting on several senior projects this year, which should be interesting. One of, I think, his strengths, and one of the things I've seen, is how well he sits with students and parents to explain how issues relate to the law. We've not had that before, and as a school administrator, we've obviously worked hard to get to that point, but when it comes to certain issues, we're not experts. And to have someone like Officer Johnson in there to explain, to teach, and to be a resource has been a huge asset. Ms. Mazzarese talked about how valuable he is behind the scenes. A lot of what he does during the day, just like a police officer, people don't see. We've had several occasions this year where he's been able to get an immediate response from the Westfield Police Department to a student's home that's in crisis, or to help locate a student who's not in the building. In some cases, without him, I can't tell you how long it would take for us to make that contact. He makes that contact, and within minutes, we'll have a car from town at somebody's house, and it's been a good experience. Again, in all cases, he works very well with parents and our staff members. I've been very impressed with that. In closing, in his first year, he's planted the seeds necessary to grow his role in our building with our students, administrators, and staff members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Mitch?
Thank you both, Jim and Maureen, for the presentation. It's very helpful, and I do appreciate you coming down. I have to say I'm a little disappointed that Officer Johnson is not here tonight. I'm a little confused by that. We are voting, we're talking about this position. I kind of shocked that I can't hear firsthand from the person that we have in this position to talk. So that's a little shocking to me, but I don't know if that was a choice or if that was a police thing, or I don't really know why, but that's my first thing, because I kind of thought I was going to hear from him as well as from Maureen and Jim, but I don't know, just a surprise to me. So just a couple thoughts and questions, I guess, and I appreciate what you've said. Were the students surveyed at all about their opinion this year? I know you've given some comments, but were there any kind of surveys done on their thoughts, just in the general population?
We have not done one this year, no.
Okay. A lot of what he's doing, which I think is great, talked about mentoring and counseling, it kind of goes back to what we talked about last year, and what a number of our neighboring towns continue to do, is to have this student activity counselor, I think is what you said, which I think is a really strong position, and potentially having somebody that has mental health experience in that, I think, is also critical. So I still, though I like hearing what he's doing, and I obviously trust everything that you're saying, I still struggle with the fact, and in some of the research I've done, a criminologist at University of Maryland wrote in an article about 2 months ago, that there's no evidence that placing officers in the schools improves safety, and it increases the number of minor behavior problems that are referred to the police, sometimes pushing kids to the criminal justice system. It doesn't sound like anything like that happened, but I just wanted to get a comment on that.
We had this discussion at our Code of Conduct meeting last Wednesday, that we haven't seen any spike in any of our discipline issues this year. No trends that are any different than any other year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, with the concern about security, which is obviously the reason the board chose to have an armed officer there, one of the things that I had brought to the board's attention, to the staff's attention, was a program called Share 911.
which is a high-tech emergency information system that provides access for employees, teachers, students, parents, and most importantly, first responders. I believe it's in around 165 districts. In fact, Springfield is using it right now, and Randolph, neither of which have an armed officer there. And I think it's being tested at Governor Livingston right now. So this is something that New Jersey School Board Association, New Jersey School Administrators Association have given their seal of approval to this program. I was actually on their website today, and they say the ability for teachers and others to use smartphones, computers, tablets, to transmit locations and status immediately to school, local, and police officials is extremely valuable for New Jersey residents. So I just don't understand why we're not heading in that direction. This was something that I know went to some committee, and they felt it was too new, or I can't, Mike is here, he probably could speak to it. But why we're not heading in that direction, and we're heading in the direction of another year of an armed police officer in the school.
So I would say you can't compare those two at all, right? But to speak to we could purchase that additional system. It was, my understanding is our Emergency Preparedness Committee did listen to the person who owns the company come and explain it twice. And also, took notes about it, discussed it, also spoke to both the local police department, not just the SRO, but the police chief to get their understanding of, here is this thing that we can pay for per student, this option that we can do, presented it to them. And then also, if you'll remember, we also have a security company that works with us and has done walkthroughs and has made recommendations. We have written reports, etc. We also presented it to that security company, our consultants, both of them, and neither one thought that that system was something that was really needed by our district. Understand other districts might have found something else, but when we've looked into it twice, both the local police department and also our security experts, as well as the people on our district committee, didn't feel as though that service was something that was a priority for us. There are other ways to address it. But again, I would not compare that to, if we had that, we wouldn't need an SRO. Because as was stated, I mean, there are a lot of different, a lot of the work that the SRO has done is certainly in the school, but as was mentioned, it's with the parents in the community as well. And a system that coordinates messages from different devices is not going to give the support to that family or that attention to that family or that child or that parent to try to address the situation.
I hear you, and I understand that. I guess my view is that that system takes a great leap in the security area that potentially one person cannot do, and I still believe that having this school activities counselor or mental health professional, which to me makes I'm personally more comfortable with that. It's just
right.
My opinion. Obviously, everyone knows how I feel about that. And again, I'm sure Officer Johnson's an excellent officer. Again, I would have loved to have the opportunity to talk to him tonight. I feel a little, as I said, disappointed about that, and I have no doubt that he's made a difference in certain kids' lives. And clearly that's not. I didn't think that wouldn't happen. That doesn't surprise me. I just continue to be concerned about having a gun in school. Recently, NewJersey.com reported an incident at another New Jersey school where a coach at a sporting event grabbed the holster and the gun from the school SRO and pointed it at another coach in anger. And I tried to get more details on this in the story. They're haven't put out all the circumstances, but that's the kind of thing that scares me. There was another one that I read about where there was a senior prank, and an SRO didn't know what was going on and approached the car with a bunch of students, gun in hand. And none of us, want to see anything like that. You don't want to think about what a stray bullet can do. New York City, a retired New York City police officer told me about a study that in situations when they're actually firing directly at someone, only 28% of them actually hit their target. And we have 2,000 kids, and we got 100 people in that school. I'm not saying, we have a great police department. They're very well trained. I continue to believe it's just not worth the risk, in my opinion. So I will be voting no tonight. Again, I appreciate your comments and hearing what you have to say, but you know, I continue to believe that I think it's the wrong thing for Westfield. So.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd also like to thank Maureen and Jim for coming to lay out more of what the SRO officer has been doing in the first year, the first reinstatement of this position at Westfield High School. I am happy to hear that the multifaceted position that we laid out last year, in fact, has really been multifaceted, from the security, helping with security in the high school, helping security issues in other schools in the district, meeting the needs of kids in crises, helping families that are in crises, helping our health professionals when kids need immediate assistance, and also providing students with a chance to get to know a police officer when they are not necessarily in trouble, and just knowing that a police officer can be there, a resource for them for questions or concerns. So I'm happy with the report that, in fact, what we hoped would happen is happening. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Did we get a second?
Yes.
Yeah, we need a second before discussion.
Rich Matesen,
Yes.
Lucy Biegler,
Absolutely.
Mark Friedman,
Yes.
Roseanne Kirsten,
Yes.
Ginny Leitz,
Yes.
Gretchen Oley,
Yes.
Mitch Slater.
No.
Well,
It's
hold
the whole
on.
finance.
Yes on all.
Yeah,
Yes
this was 1 to
except
21. You want to
No on 4.
vote no to just
Vote, I'm sorry, yes to the others and no on number
4.
4.
Fort.
Thank you.
Anything else for finance, Mark?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to legislation. Ann is out tonight. I'm not aware of her leaving any report.
No.
All right. Technology Committee, Mitch.
We're meeting, I think, a week from Friday. I'll have notes after the meeting.
Thank you. I'd ask the board to note the notes for the record. With that, go to unfinished business.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
I was just, I just think that Mr. Nelson's coming back. That's wonderful.
Yes.
That's great news.
Put that on the.
Feels like you just left. Probably not for him.
Yes, we're very happy that
But,
Mr. Nelson is coming back and is in good health.
That's
and,
great.
Will there be something done at the school, a parade or something appropriate?
Actually, he will be taking some vacation because he did not take that last year.
Good.
So, but we will
That's also
be
appropriate.
seeing him in the near future.
Good,
Yes.
good. Glad he's okay.
All right, any unfinished business?
So Friday the 30th.
Yes.
Seeing none, I'll
No,
move.
no.
Is that colonoscopy?
They're texting each other.
It's the 6th. It's the first Friday of June.
Yes.
I do have an announcement to make, and I did prepare a statement, so I'll read it. When I ran 3 years ago, I said the time was right for me and my family. I cannot say the same for the upcoming 3 years, and therefore it is with great disappointment that I announce I will not be running for re-election. I have thoroughly enjoyed and am proud of the work we've accomplished during my tenure on the board, but unfortunately, I cannot continue to devote the time I believe is necessary to do the best job I can for the district. I thank you for the confidence and support you had in me and hope that I will be able to contribute in other ways in the future. In addition, I look forward to the next 7 months, because yes, there is still 7 months of the term, where I will continue to do the best I can for the 6,000 plus students, community, teachers, and staff. I thank you again for giving me the opportunity to serve, and please feel free to contact me if anyone out there is interested in running. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'll save my comments for 7 months from now. So I certainly understand the difficulty with which that decision is made. We all know on the board this is it's a demanding position. It takes a lot of time, a lot of personal time, and unfortunately a lot of night time away from home. That's a very difficult position to be in. Any other unfinished business? Any new business? Liaison reports. Lucy.
I had the privilege, we were invited to attend Celebrate America at Wilson School on May 14th. I was really excited to go. Got my little gold invitation and I accepted it. And all the classrooms, 1st through 5th, leaps and bounds, you would just walk in, all the classrooms, they were all celebrating America. They worked really long, all year long. All their hard work was displayed. There was lots of research you could see that they did across the curriculum. There's a lot of technology going on and children presenting things, and all the smart boards and Promethean boards, what have you, that were in each classroom were going on, and children were holding up, Statue of Liberty's lights and speaking. And it was really interesting and neat to see all the writing displayed from the little ones all the way up to the older children. They also had this tremendous, I had to actually touch it, this wall of tile for acts of kindness. They took tile and like the little kid's face, each student's face was embedded in the tile and sealed, and it was baked in there. And I think it was wings of some sort. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember exactly if each child's tile was different, but it was all sharing and caring and things that they were doing, and it made this huge display wall right when you walk in. So I actually had to touch it because it didn't look like the children's faces were actually melted in there. And then at the end, they ended it with square dancing with the 2nd graders, and they did a great job. Some of the children were a little, embarrassed to go up at first, but that's something that, was popularized in America as well. And all the 2nd graders, boys and girls, square danced. So it was really a fun night, and I want to thank Mr. Malanga and Wilson School for inviting us.
Nice. Thank you.
Had fun.
Ginny?
Yes, I attended the Union County Ed Services Commission Board of Directors meeting May 7th, and the only thing to report there is that they have asked me to serve on their negotiations committee. So it will be a very interesting opportunity to see the dynamic of a different negotiating experience. So I am looking forward to that, having not any other experience other than this one. I also attended the McKinley PTO general meeting, and I found certain things of interest to tell you. One, they will have what's called Ladybug document cameras placed in each classroom, and they're looking forward to that. That's based on PTO funding. Will allow children's eyes to all be on the same text when reading aloud is occurring in the classroom. So they feel that that will be a really strong focal point for enhancing reading aloud and also the visual aspect that accompanies learning to read especially. Regarding the conduct of lockdown drills, we had some conversations about security and the multiple phases of security that the board will be paying for in the upgrading our schools. Right after lockdown drills in the future, children's feedback will be sought in a very serious attempt paid to conducting the drills. Teachers will convene on their carpets with the children after the next drill, and I guess for a while, multiple drills, to listen to their responses. There's considerable concern as to what these drills are perceived as from a child's perspective. And I think it's very valuable to try to understand what's going through the minds of the children, either tangentially, intellectually, emotionally, when they're experiencing lockdown drills. And if nothing else, it's an opportunity to center everyone back in one safe place, which is their classroom carpet, and just listen as children kind of debrief on their experience and their perspective. Teacher training will also be undertaken to prepare the teachers for children's reactions and to provide emotional support and for emotional preparation for these drills and to support the feedback process that they're going to be going through. As an aside, Mr. Bruno, principal of McKinley, mentioned that he had interrupted a couple of children on one of his tours of the building as he came around a corner very quickly, and as they stopped up short, he said, "So, what is Mr. Bruno's first and most important job here at McKinley?" And both of them said in unison, to keep us safe. It is a focused and very supported cultural aspect of McKinley, and I'm sure all of our schools, to repeatedly develop within the children the comfort of being in a safe place. So I always enjoy going to these meetings, and I always learn a little something about who our district is and what we're actually doing and who our children are. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? All right, with that, I just want to jump back, unfinished business. We need to formalize our board goals for next year. So we had a conversation at our last workshop around what those goals should be. After the workshop, Roseanne circulated a draft of the goals to all board members. I don't know if you received back comments or people were okay with the goals, but anyway, this is the time we could discuss them and adopt them if that's where we are.
I put a copy at everyone's seat, if you didn't bring it with you. Do we want to take a look at the first one? So clarify governance structures, roles and responsibilities of the board and individual boardsmanship. Is it boardmanship or boardsmanship?
I think it's boardsmanship.
Yeah. So there's a typo there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were some ways to go about that. Now you could, we could rephrase it to say an individual boardsmanship through conducting workshops and training specific to board roles, responsibilities, and boardsmanship. For example, finance, team building, Edline or online resources, committee yearly and long-term goals, types of contracts, and strategic planning workshops. The creation of a handbook, the coming prepared to meetings and meeting deadlines. So those were just some ideas that I think that we talked about at our workshop, and then also what were mentioned in the self-evaluation that we did complete. So thoughts, things that should be taken out of this, things that could be revised. Is this a true reflection of how we ended the discussion?
I think it is. I like this goal, the governance goal.
I like the goal, but I'm a little concerned about the specificity of the bullets. They are a lot, and they are wide-ranging. And I don't know if from my mind, they detract from my overall goal, which is to share an understanding of governance, really. I'm interested in all of these other things, but not to the exclusion of what I feel is the primary focus, which for me is everybody clearly understands the role of a board member, the interaction of board members, the value of what governance is, what it does, what it allows, how it allows a board to conduct business, and how it can affect efficient and positive outcomes in board leadership. So I respect that many of these things, I think this can come about through workshop, through training, through conversation, but I do not prefer the board to get bogged down in some of the technical conversations that might go along with some of these bullets.
I hear you. In my mind, the bullets are by what method? Is it possible to reach this goal? What are some things we might do to achieve that goal? So that's how I see it.
I see it as clutter.
Okay.
Sorry.
So,
That's fine.
Well, I don't agree. I think that it's a means of keeping us accountable. I mean, I'm not opposed to this goal. I like it. I think it's something that we definitely need. But I think one of the things that's lacking is that this needs to be it needs to be more embedded in who we are. So for instance, I mean, we now know that we're going to have 2 new board members come January, right? And so hopefully just 2. And so hopefully it's an opportunity for us, if this is one of our goals, to learn about governance as a unit. But given the fact that there is turnover, it needs to be something that's more that happens naturally. I don't want it to be something that in 3 years this becomes the goal again because we have all new people, and there needs to be some continuity to it. And so to me, the bullet points hold us accountable and hopefully create a system by which there'll be continuity. If we create a handbook, it holds us accountable to create a handbook, and then that's something that makes it more systemic. So I appreciate what you're saying. I don't want to lose sight of the broader goal, but I would like some recognition in it that the ultimate goal is that these are part of who we are, part of our system, and how do we create that so that we're not doing this again every 3 or 4 years. And maybe it's something that has to kind of be revisited every 3 or 4 years, but I think we can all acknowledge, especially those of us who have more recently come on the board, that it's lacking. There's something that's lacking that we could make better for new board members.
My only comment would be, and I don't know if it's, whether it's number 1 or number 2, matters at all to me. It shows when I see 2, I think 1 is more important than 2.
Oh.
Just in general, whenever I see a list, I think. So for me personally, number 2 is more important than number 1. I think
so you'd like that to be number 1?
I would like that to be number 1.
Right.
I think that has more teeth. And I feel that, not that governance and roles and responsibilities, it's important and critical, but I think ultimately we have to really do some strategic thinking going forward. And when I think about the board today, and I think about the board 10 years ago, and I think about things that have really worked well and some things that haven't worked well, I think ultimately that comes to the really good strategic planning that was done or maybe wasn't done. And so I think if I'm a board member 10 years from now, I will not say that, whoever's a board member in 10 years, looking back, I think will really appreciate a board that's very strategic and forward-thinking. So for me personally, I would flip-flop them. I have no problem with the goal. I just would flip-flop them. But that's just me.
I don't see the priority that way, so I personally don't have a problem flipping the 1 and 2. Yeah. Because it wasn't purposefully 1 and 2. It was, I think we talked about 1 first, and then.
No, I understand.
I
understand.
I was
just
not doing
when
it as any
when
way
you see a
to
list, I
identify
tend to
priority.
think, 1 is more important than 2.
So can we go back to Gretchen's point for a minute? And I'm indifferent on the order. We can figure that out as we approve them. But your point about establishing a model maybe for future board members. What if we bake that into the first sentence? What's that?
You said it better than I did. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So what if the first goal were clarify governance structures, roles, and responsibilities of the board and individual boardsmanship, and establish a sustainable governance model to facilitate the onboarding of new members over time? Something like that. You get the concept right in the goal.
I like that.
So the onboarding process.
The onboarding may be the wrong word, but
That's
the
okay, I
point
don't mind
is
the onboarding.
model for the future.
Onboarding is climatization, it's acclimating, it's orienting, but to me, that loses sight of the ongoing
Yes.
developmental,
Yes.
cultural development, climate development of the board as a whole, and I refuse to lose that. Not
So
that I
I was
don't
just trying
want
to capture that in sustainable, but
Well,
we can
but
capture it
but-
another way.
But a structure and a model does not necessarily define future evolution of a group. So, Gretchen, I'm here to tell you that any board is better for doing this every year and having conversations about maybe slightly different points of view with different perspectives for different outcomes, but talking about roles and responsibilities and whether it's decision models, whether it's communication processes, if it can happen every year, everyone, from my understanding, benefits.
And I
And the
don't disagree
organization
with you, but I
benefits.
think my point is that I would hope that we could create something so that it doesn't have to be a goal every year. I think it should be something that happens naturally and
I couldn't
something
agree
that
more.
happens as a matter of course. What I heard when we all talked about it last Tuesday was that we all feel a unique and need for it, that we don't feel like we have it and that we want it. And so we're making it a goal for ourselves. But I just don't know that it needs to be an annual goal. Then what's the point of having goals? Do you understand what I'm saying? I think that every year, I don't have a problem with it being our goal. I just want it to be something that becomes
We
systemic.
want to be held accountable to it.
Yes.
And you want
And
things
so
that are.
if our goal can reflect that in some way, I think we're saying the same thing.
I do too.
I just don't.
I do too.
Clarify governance structures,
If
roles,
it was-
responsibilities of the board,
if
and
the-
individual boardsmanship.
If the value was embraced by everybody, and we all were on the same page and knew that we would benefit from workshops, large conversations of this nature, it wouldn't have to be a goal, from my point of view. It could be a natural occurrence that we all valued. But right now, we need to focus on it.
So we
And
are.
you agree?
Right. But with the hope being that it becomes something that happens more naturally.
A valued
And so
part-
I would
a
like
part
to
of our activity.
have that reflected in the goal somehow. That's what our goal. We're saying the same thing. I just want to say it.
So what if
Do it now and never again?
No,
What
that's
if
not
it-
what I'm
What if it
suggesting.
happened more naturally? What if our goal was to create the handbook for this year, and then it
No.
became? Well, let me finish.
Yes, absolutely.
Create the handbook for this year, and then it plays out more naturally from that handbook, because then new board members would have it. No.
But it's more than
It's not a
the
handbook.
board members, and the handbook is one piece of a larger, in my mind.
Well, you would
So I
learn
was- here's-
roles and
I-
responsibilities through it.
I was trying to write something, clarify governance structures, roles and responsibilities of the board, and individual boardsmanship.
Actually,
and establish a structure and framework to sustain this work, as, and then I stopped.
I think your first sentence is perfect. I don't think it needs more. I don't think it needs less. I don't think it needs bullet points. The only thing I might put, develop individual boardsmanship, because boardsmanship is a
Yeah.
capability.
Uh-huh.
It's a strength,
And
it's
develop,
a characteristic that people
Yeah.
can bring to the table. An understanding of what boards do, how they operate, interactions, collaboration, the value of a relationship building to get things done.
What if we just add it at the end in a manner that becomes systemic? Trying to get at Gretchen's concern, which
Well,
I
let's
think
make
we
it
understand.
achievable.
Sustainable. How about sustainable?
Sustainable.
I mean, that's a big leap from providing the knowledge base. Now you're expecting people to inculcate it, to internalize it, to the extent that it becomes a valued piece of everybody's participation. I would love it. I wouldn't want to measure it, not after just 1 year. It's an ongoing process. But I would support it.
What if we just say, clarify governance, I missed the change that Ginny made, so I'm just gonna read this
Put
again.
the word develop in front of individual. Or
Okay, so if it just says, clarify governance structures, roles, and responsibilities of the board, and develop individual boardsmanship, and establish a framework to sustain ongoing leadership. Look, here's what has to happen, right? Whoever sits in those chairs next year has to make it a priority, regardless of what the other individuals around here. So if we can create some sort of leadership, if a system, where the leaders have to take ownership of making this a part of our, then maybe that's the way to do it.
Well, doesn't everybody have to take ownership of it?
Well, all right, I'm just trying.
Yes,
I just feel like we're sitting here talking about like this, and I want to make it this,
Right, which is what the bullets,
What are we doing?
in my mind, are meant
I know,
to do.
I'm sure that'll be.
Which is in my
I don't
mind
say
what the
anything
bullets, which is in my mind what the bullets do. They ground you. They ground you in in the concrete, in the what can you do
7 months to do it,
reach
Roseanne.
that goal. That's right, 7 months. So let's go. No, but and maybe it feels better. Maybe to less.
Now, we are next year.
Maybe to less clutter it. It's
Seems we reorganize. It's okay, Roseanne.
okay.
I'm not unsupportive.
Right,
Just,
I'm not-
in my mind,
I
it's,
hear you.
I don't need the specifics. What I need
Okay.
is a commitment to
Okay.
have the conversation, have the training, have the ability to talk out
Mm-hmm.
what we can do, what we can't do, who we are, how we get things done.
Okay. So you're okay with the clutter at the moment? Okay.
It's
All
not
right.
going
And
anywhere.
how about the first one, the second one, which is moving to the first one?
Yeah, well,
Elevate board work to be more strategic and forward-thinking.
because it's more
Now, this
important.
is where these bullets, I think, this is holding all of board members accountable, not just the leadership. That, the committee chairs and the committee members, if we were to meet this goal, need to set yearly and long-term goals for their committee and keep in mind, which I think we do anyway, but this might call it out even more, just think about how their decisions and the choices they're making are impacting the finances, short and long-term goals. I think we do that anyway. I know we do that in SIP. And I would imagine facilities is doing that all the time.
We don't think about that in finance.
Yeah,
Right,
finance,
right,
of course, doesn't think about it.
Long range
But-
doesn't look at curve, we
Right,
just
right.
look further out.
So maybe that one doesn't need to be there, but it was something that was discussed at the meeting on Tuesday, so I wanted to, address it. But,
Is there some expectation that committees are going to report out to the full board in terms of what these goals are? And so maybe we should just
in my
say-
mind, yes. But in Roseanne's world, yes. Everybody else's world,
Must be nice to
who
live in your
knows?
world.
Yeah, hey, it's very clear. So what is this about conducting strategic planning workshops? That certainly is an activity that has to do with strategic planning. And when it occurs, when we're ready for it, it happens. When else do you want it to happen?
I didn't understand that question.
Why did you call it out?
Because the thing is elevate board work to be more strategic and forward-thinking, so we might need a workshop on how that happens.
Well, those are tactics
Right.
in order to help achieve
Right.
the goal.
I understand, but
you're against. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're against putting them in the goal.
No, I'm just saying that we conduct a strategic planning workshop when we're working on a strategic plan.
Oh, no,
But
no,
would you
oh.
like to have a workshop
No.
about strategic planning, about committees?
I'm not talking about a workshop to create the strategic plan.
Okay, what are you
I'm
talking
talking
about?
about strategic planning, thinking strategically in general.
Okay.
The notion of
How
thinking
do you want to ground that one,
forward-thinking.
Gretchen?
I really like
I know, I'm sure.
trying to be cooperative. But I mean, we have
Going to
strategic
Abilene.
and forward thinking in the goal. You probably could take that bullet out.
Conduct workshops?
Well, just because
Oh,
we
okay.
said we would be more strategic and forward thinking.
Okay. And it's up top, for those of you who missed it, as part of one of our workshops.
Oh, we didn't miss a thing. Trust me, Roseanne. Your imprint is all over.
So, anything else? I mean, I'll rework and resend, and if there are more comments or questions, we can certainly revise.
What do we
accordingly.
mean by forward thinking? Do we have a shared understanding?
Thinking ahead.
I have no idea what you mean by forward thinking. So.
Long term.
Thinking ahead.
Okay, okay.
I mean, think about money, for example. I mean, how are we going to pay for something in the future? With all the limitations we have. I mean, that's an example of forward thinking.
Facilities forward thinking, I mean, looking at different revenue.
I think each committee
resources.
has to be forward thinking, and I actually think each committee is very
Is.
forward thinking. I'm not saying we shouldn't be forward thinking, but I think.
Well, it depends upon what your horizon is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, forward thinking could be a year, but,
Yeah.
I think we would like, and it's not necessarily part of a strategic plan, but it's just that in each of the committees, how do we, I think elevate's the right word, how do we kind of get ourselves out of the weeds sometimes, because I think we're down in the weeds a lot, and how do we get up here and start to think about what we're going to be, those people that Mitch was talking about that are going to be here 10 years from now, what kind of challenges are they going to be facing that maybe we can help them over the next few years, kind of give them a soft landing.
We could never have predicted where we are today 10 years ago.
No, you probably can't, but
Right.
maybe you need to be
I- no, I-
thinking
I-
what could happen, right?
I
And-
understand.
Right.
I understand. It's just that economic conditions and governmental interventions and mandates would never have, we would never have imagined ourselves in our current situation.
But
10 years
perhaps the forward thinking is, all right, let's assume it gets no better, right? We could have a pretty good discussion of what happens if it gets worse, but we could have a discussion about what happens if it gets no better. Where are we heading? What was that?
We have those things.
Well, yeah.
But they're valuable.
But, and we do, I mean,
Always
I can
valuable.
speak for SIP. I mean, we think, we could think more forwardly, I think. I mean, we have our 5-year plan. We do talk about STEM and some other initiatives. But we could say, okay, in 5 years, what do you want the instruction to look like? Do you see it looking the same? Do you see it looking different? Why might it look different? How can we move to get us to where we want it to look like? I mean, Janine and Adam talked about PBL, project-based learning, problem-based learning, performance-based learning. Is that where the instruction is going for the district? If so, let's plan for that. If not, let's figure out why not and what that might look like. So I'm not sure, SIP isn't having that level of forward thinking, and maybe that's something that should happen.
Well, I think Paul made a comment before about, looking at the top 10 jobs, right? So maybe we should be doing that on a more regular basis and try to, kind of, we do this in business all the time, what are the trends going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Maybe it's the same thing here, and when our kids now that are in kindergarten, when they get out of school 12 years from now, what's the job market going to look like, and what are we going to be needing in the job market?
And are they going to come to school every day?
Right. Sounds good.
Okay. Great.
What's the next step?
The next step is I'm going to recirculate, and then we'll,
Fulsome
do we vote on that?
Goes to the Union County Workshop Committee.
Right, okay, and then we'll
Probably
vote.
put them on the 10th and vote.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks,
What's
Roseanne.
next? Good job,
you.
Roseanne.
Thank you. With that, I would recognize the public for questions or comments on any topic. Seeing no one come to the podium, I would ask the board to approve the following resolutions. Resolve that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, personnel, pending or anticipated litigation, and pending or anticipated contract negotiations. And be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. I have a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? We'll move to private session.